I went to church and asked a priest what it means to be heavenly. He said, if you confess with your lips and say 3 Hail Marys, you're saved, guaranteed. I said, really? That's all I need? He said, yeah, and you must baptize yourself into Christianity. So I did all 3, and nothing changed. I followed all the rules, but I felt the same. So I went to God and I asked the same. I said, what will it take for me to be heavenly? He didn't answer at first, but a week later I tried to give $1 to a homeless man. He didn't take the $1, but he took my hand. He looked straight in my eyes. They were sad but sincere. He said, son, just take better care of yourself. Growing up, they told me I couldn't get into heaven if I didn't believe in the Trinity. I said 3 gods are too many for me, and something tells me God prefers monogamy. If we must be 3, let it be my Father and His Spirit in me, preaching freedom to those in bondage, bringing healing to the brokenhearted, teaching people what it means to be free, not by information, but rather immersion, not baptism, just personal experience in close proximity, intimacy in meeting their needs. This is a gospel that makes sense to me. Someone told me, when we get to heaven, no one's gonna have genitals. I said, well, if that's the case, we shouldn't fight so much with the LGBs if God would have us all be T's. This was on the backdrop of a conversation about sex and marriage. I asked if we'd be getting married in heaven, an innocent question, I swear. I'm just curious why we'd be given the capacity for romantic love if we're not meant to enjoy it there. They said, there'll be no need for sex when we ascend to spiritual beings. But I thought I was already a spiritual being, expressed through a body tailored just for me. Tell me, why are human beings so set on denying the tangible reality? The Buddhists say we must transcend to nirvana. The Christians say we must go up to heaven. The Hindus say the body is merely a vessel and we change through reincarnation. And yet, after a while, this all starts to sound like self-hatred to me. That a part of me was made to be denied and killed, the ego, if you will. It must be disciplined, I understand, but like a child, not a criminal. In my eyes, the physical being is something to be nurtured and freed, never crucified. Someone asked me how I'm going to introduce the gospel to my kids. I said, one thing I've learned from having siblings is that children don't learn from what they're told, they learn from what they experience. So I think the gospel's been limited. People think the gospel is bringing someone to church, but Jesus never invited anyone to a building, much less a system. He invited them to live life with Him, to observe the fruit of His teachings, and those He didn't, He left them wisdom through personal experience. In other words, the gospel for my children will be my relationship with them. So I read about the Antichrist. They said he'd come in the name of God, telling people where to go and how to live. He would rob, kill, and steal, spreading his corrupt gospel by any means. And well, that sounds an awful lot like Christianity. And I don't mean the average believer. I mean the creators of this system. Some might call it blasphemy. But then let Mr. Vicar of Christ go free. Like Christ would ever live vicariously. If Jesus must spread His good news by vicarious means, then let it be us who are the vessels for His prophecies. Let it be those who yearn for justice and peace, not warmongers masking themselves as sheep, who tell us we can't get into heaven if we don't believe in their Trinity and every other idea they came up with to keep us from God's simplicity. If heaven requires that I pillage and steal for others to accept my religious beliefs, if heaven desires that I hate myself in order for God to be pleased, if heaven means I must die before I can be free, then heaven desires I live as a slave, and that is no heaven for me. I'll take my chances on a heaven personal to me. In my heaven, there are no Christians or Muslims, just human beings. As it was in the beginning, so shall it be. There will be people from every nation, kind, and creed. In fact, heaven will be just like earth, with better leaders over nations and cities. And everyone is who they were meant to be, living their dream. Designers create, musicians play, and teachers teach children what it means to be free. And me, I'll be somewhere in Africa tending sheep, writing stories and planting fields, loving people and building communities, because that's the kind of heaven that makes sense to me. My heaven isn't a place for the perfect or the tryhards. It's a place for those who tried their best. My heaven is not for the posh and the privileged, but for the worst kinds of humans with the best kinds of hearts. And while the rest put their lives down by religion's decree, we sought to make God pleased by making of our lives something worth seeing.